Right, well, good evening, everyone. My name's Peter Bonfield, and I'm the Vice Chancellor and President here at the University of Westminster, our wonderful university based here at the heart of London. I'm at our main offices on Regent Street at the moment, and we're in for a real treat this evening because we've got our amazing, brilliant Royal Academy of Engineering sponsored visiting professor at the University of Westminster, Professor Yewande Akinola's inaugural lecture, which is going to be a huge treat and inspiration to listen to. Yewande's the most amazing person. She's got multifaceted careers and a very creative, technical, compassionate, innovative, creative, communicative way of seeing things and seeing the world. She's a real positive disruptor and influencer who has already made huge impact in her life, and I absolutely know is going to go on and make even more and increasing positive impacts on the world, particularly around things like the Sustainable Development Goals, where we're fighting for more social justice, more equality, fairness, education, gender equality, as well as, you know, cleaning the world, cleaning the climate to make the planet a sustainable place. Yewande has so many highlights already in her life to bring out, but I mean, one or two of them. So she's an engineer. She's worked in manufacturing and in design and creation in the built environment. She's been a trustee of the Institution of Engineering and Technology, where actually we work together on the same board of trustees. She was the institution, the IETs, the Institution of Engineering and Technology Young Woman Engineer of the Year a few years ago, a completely inspiring role model for many young females around the world to come in and enter a profession that is very male dominated and which needs much more diversity. So, for example, with that, at the latest Young Women of the Engineer Awards, which were held in the last couple of weeks, Yewande was the speaker, the main speaker. And again, it was a huge privilege to see these successors to Yewande coming through with incredible stories of how they've made real impact happen. And it was great to see. Yewande gave a brilliant speech. And then the next day, or a couple of days later, she took these young women engineers to meet Rishi Sunak, our Chancellor of the Exchequer here, to help inspire him with understanding how critical engineering is and how really important it is to do all we can to support a much more diverse workforce in that sector, so that we can come up with sorts of solutions that help meet the world challenges out there. She was awarded an MBE for her services to science, technology, engineering, and maths and diversity in 2020. And now, just recently, in the last couple of months, she has been appointed as the UK Ambassador for Clean and Green Growth, on behalf of Innovate UK, which is the UK's innovation agency. So, and best of all, she's one of us here at the University of Westminster, been with us for 18 months now, and has done great work connecting businesses, connecting our own views with our students and with our colleagues here to help try and, you know, help each one of our students and colleagues find what makes them as individuals very special, to nurture those strengths and help them to go out as great global citizens, brilliant employees, or increasingly 1 in 5 of our students go out and freelance or set up their own businesses and find their own way around the world, often around social enterprise, which is very much part of it. So Yewande, it's fantastic to have you with us, and we're really looking forward to what you have to say. Your title is Global Citizen, Reporting for Duty. I think you've been doing that for quite a while. And the way this will work is Yewande will give her lecture in a moment, her inaugural lecture. At the end, we have a Q&A session. Please do pop your questions into the chat function. They'll be emailed to me and I will relay them to Yewande. And then at the end, I'll ask Professor Isaac Kale, who is the engine behind the application of getting Yewande to us. Also Sarah Main, our other Royal Academy of Engineering visiting professor. And he will say a few words at the end to summarise. So yeah, let's really enjoy our evening. Great to have you all here with us at Westminster. Thank you so much for coming. And Yewande, over to you.
Thank you so much, Peter. You've been a huge source of support and encouragement too. So I would say some of those accolades are also thanks to you. Thank you very much for continuing to champion me as I embark or continue on this journey. I'd like to say a huge welcome to everybody that is on this webinar. I'm so grateful that you are here. It's such a pleasure to be able to share my inaugural lecture with you. And it's been a journey and a half. And as I reflect back, I know that there are so many people on this webinar who have been a huge part of my journey. And so this is my way of also saying thank you for believing in me, for trusting in some of the decisions that I've made, and for championing me on this journey as well. So I'm going to share my screen, and there we go. Hopefully you can see my screen now. And well, I've titled this Global Citizen Reporting for Duty. When I started to think about a title for this evening, I literally went back to what the journey has been, over the last, 30 plus years. And the fact that I feel like I've either gained a part of the world in so many different parts of the world, or I've left a part of me in different parts of the world. And so, the universal language of the career choice that I made definitely has a global feel. Now, where did it start from? If it was going to start somewhere, it started here. Being born to two incredible people, my dad, Yewande Akinola, and my wonderful mother, Yewande Akinola. My dad was a lawyer, a civil servant, and he was just an incredible person in terms of his sense of service to community and his sense of service to his country. He rose up to become the permanent secretary of what was the Western region of Nigeria, and held several ministerial positions, Minister of Transport, Minister of Housing. He had a real commitment, a real deep commitment to ensuring that the people around him lived comfortably, had the resources that they needed to be, they needed to be the best versions of themselves. My mom, an artist, Yewande Akinola, as well as my biggest source of inspiration, a production manager for a cards manufacturing company, really did everything that she could to ensure that, we had two children, my sister and I had the best in terms of an exposure to culture, to education. She was also a lecturer as well. She taught at the University of Ife, and also taught in a polytechnic in Ibadan. So my childhood was pretty much between two great cities, Ibadan and Ile-Ife. So Ibadan, I was born in Ibadan, and then when mom moved to become a lecturer in the fine arts department in Ife, we moved with her and had the experience of deep culture, of incredible spaces. Now, for those who don't know Ibadan's got, an incredible history, located on 7 hills. And according to historians, a military legend called Lagelu founded the city. And it was intended to be a war camp for warriors coming from, northern areas that were north of what then became Ibadan. But very quickly, it became this strategic defense location, as well as a location for traders to meet. Ife, on the other hand, literally is regarded in Yoruba myth as the cradle of all humankind. People believe that life started in Ile-Ife. And so when you go back to its culture, its history has a lot of art, there's a lot of storytelling, there's a lot of mythology, as well as an appreciation for, what the earth gives us in terms of materials and resources. So I, from a very young age, was exposed to, stunning culture. We lived on campus in Ile-Ife, and I literally grew up, with all these incredible 1960s architectural, beautiful, stunning pieces around. It was, in so many ways, a, merge of culture, of, slightly foreign, I'd say Israeli stroke German architecture of that time. There was a lot of repetition in the patterns, in the facades of structure. There was a lot of incorporation of what was regarded as, an interpretation of the art from surrounding areas. And so I grew up maybe not really appreciating that I was, literally living, in the midst of great art, but it became an unconscious aspect of my approach and appreciation for culture and art, as well as experiences that I had when we then moved back to Ibadan, and where I actually spent a lot of my growing years. So this is what you're seeing now is, pretty much a slide of and a piece of a very, very happy part of my childhood. I spent a lot of time in this incredible building, designed by and built, not just designed and built by a wonderful Nigerian architect called Demas Nwoko. And Demas Nwoko, in my view, is the Le Corbusier of, African architecture. Again, a 1960s production. He wanted to be able to create something that mirrored the materials that were available in this part of Ibadan. He wanted to be able to incorporate art as well. He wanted to be able to incorporate an interpretation of the culture. Every single piece in this building was either handcrafted from locally sourced materials. And I remember even everything right down to the pots that we ate from, right? So there were these incredible clay plates and pots that we would eat our lunch from. The chairs were beautifully handcrafted wooden pieces that were extremely comfortable. There was an amphitheater. Now, who grows up with a mini amphitheater in their garden? My sister and I and his daughter Chibu did. We spent many hours in this theater pretending to act out scenes from what I guess was, our imagination in so many ways. And I grew up within this grandeur. Again, probably not appreciating, the extent of it at the time, but definitely picking on, the fact that art was equal to architecture, art was equal to an interpretation of, what was around, and really with the idea that you could design for society, you could design to reflect what was in your immediate surrounding. And so this was inevitable. My teenage years were pretty much, spent designing and making models out of the stack of paper that my mom always had in the corner of our living room. I would spend hours and hours literally just thinking up what I would imagine would be better living spaces for myself and my family and for loved ones. And I got so much joy and so much satisfaction from being able to create these things from the paper in my mom's living room. She was so accommodating of it, She always left the stack of paper there. I never got told off for using her paper. She always made sure there was glue around for me to use. She was, and my sister as well, they were very complimentary of the process of thinking up something as well as making something from, a thought that popped into my head. I very, very quickly found it was also a useful way of recording some of the images of, buildings I'd either driven past. And actually the photo in the top right-hand corner, one of my friends, my dad's friends, took us on a trip to his village and the area where my dad grew up. And I remember pretty much halfway through the trip, he remembered that we had forgotten the camera that, he was really hoping that we would be able to capture some incredible images of the nearby surroundings with. And I remember just finding comfort in the fact that I could just kind of take this mental picture and, all I had to do was, when I got back home, just get back to, my paper and my glue, and I could kind of, just replicate some of the things that I had seen, some of the buildings I had seen. So, I did that, and it just was my way of reflecting the art that I was seeing around me. And so when it came to me deciding what I was going to become, architecture was definitely the first thing on my mind. I was so sure that the only way I was going to be able to live that life of great ambition and really reflect all the things I wanted to achieve in life, I'd have to become an architect. But then my mom got involved. And I love this picture because every time I look at it, I try to imagine the thoughts that were going, through her mind when she held me, in her arms at, only a week old or 2 weeks old. Like, I can imagine that she was thinking out, I don't know what she was thinking, but I can imagine she'd have been wondering, what I would become, what I might have liked and what I might not have liked. She came into my room just as I was starting to think of universities to apply to, and suggested that I applied to study engineering. And she said to me, she said, one day, with engineering, you would be able to work on water projects and power projects, on transport projects. And actually, I've always attributed the decision to study engineering to her, but I can also imagine that she was very much influenced by her father. Right in the middle of this picture, he was an engineer, and here he's pictured at 30 years old, maybe, a qualified, certified engineer. He worked in civil service. And my mom and her siblings spent a lot of their growing years traveling with him from one town to another city, working on different projects, so bridges, roads, you name it. He spent a lot of his years as a civil engineer working across the country. So I'm sure there was a little bit of that influence, a little bit or a big, massive bit of that influence in her thinking, and that might have inspired her to encourage me to consider engineering. And so I started this engineering journey at Warwick University. The attraction to Warwick was they offered a course that had a huge, massive bias towards developing countries. So I moved from Ibadan to Coventry to learn how I could be a better engineer for, developing countries around the world. And it was really the most peculiar course because it was not about the glam. It was not about, how much money you could make being a super, amazing, petroleum engineer, which would have been what, anybody would have expected me coming from Nigeria to study. It was really about being able to come up with solutions for progress, solutions that would help people have water supply, help people have the right, power supply in their communities. It was really about how you would help people use the most of their local resources to be able to give themselves the most comfortable lives in a sustainable manner. And so we were guided by Dr. Colin Oram and a few of us who had this ambition to be part of, our world's sustainable development movement. And the picture on the right shows some of my wonderful friends because they've remained friends. And, literally we enjoyed 3-4 years of working in the most remotest of places. We had, task and design challenges in very remote places in Wales. We designed donkey carts for different parts of the world. And in so many ways, it helped me start to understand why we had to ensure that designing for the world was simple, it was applicable, and also it was a solution that could always be, maintained using local resources. The course was called EDAT, and when I did a little bit of research just to even see what the internet was saying about EDAT, right, this is what came up. EDAT's primary focus was on engineering development for third world countries, and there's a big, massive correlation between EDAT students and low energy lifestyles, as well as political campaigning. And in my head, I just thought, actually, you know what, this was the start. This was the foundation for, really seeing that correlation between, sustainable development and low energy based design solutions. And so when I worked on my 3rd year project, it only made sense that I went back to where I'd come from in terms of an ambition to be able to either create, better living conditions for people around me. And water struck as one of the biggest parts of that ambition, because I could see the direct correlation between, easy access to clean water, and, comfortable living, as well as the correlation, between girls, for example, being able to go to school because they had access to clean water. And so I spent some time in Tamale, really understanding what the options, so the interventions could potentially be for achieving clean water as a basic amenity. And again, in so many ways, that really started to cement my understanding of, how you would design. So designing for, continuity, designing for sustainability, designing for the upliftment and progress of people around. So those three headlines as such were the basis and the foundation for me going into a career in engineering, right? So designing for upliftment, designing for sustainable development, i.e. continuity, as well as just ensuring that people could design for the context that they were living in. And then that took me to Bristol. I graduated in 2007. 2007 was pretty much the last year the EDAT course ran at Warwick. I had literally just experienced this, eye-opening, foundation for design in Tamale in Ghana. And later that summer, I moved to Bristol and was, I guess, met by what in so many ways I regard as a huge blessing in David George. And in so many ways, it was a continuation of a profound experience that I had had literally months before. Because where in Tamale, I'd seen these different, solutions for a developing, in quotes, community, I could see, in David George's solutions, very, very similar approaches in terms of, how you would tackle design in a developed setting. And so I started to get some validation from the idea of designing, two different communities, but very, very, very similar in terms of the idea of communicating design, in terms of the breaking down into different, manageable chunks of the design stages. Also in terms of breaking rules for design sustainability, ensuring that, energy was reduced at every stage of progression. And David had an incredible way of really just expressing and communicating engineering. And it was so refreshing because the images you see are pretty much some of the initial sketches that he did in my first, year at Arup in Bristol. And it was refreshing because it was something I could relate to. It wasn't the complex, complicated, jargon-filled language that sometimes occurs in engineering. It was art, something I was used to, from seeing my mom sketch, patterns and see her sketch solutions or ideas for cards or calendars, or even, some of her sketches of just us in the house. It was something that I could relate to, something that I wasn't afraid of. And so it was so refreshing, so encouraging to be able to see engineering and art come together in this way. The next step on from that was the art then becoming an actual physical object. And that's the way I learned engineering design. From the place of you come up with the impression to the place of you then create that impression and make it something tangible. And David and the team absolutely taught me that. The photos you see on the left-hand corner are again sketches of what this idea was progressing to something that was actually, was super tangible, something that one could touch and make and ensure served a purpose. Now, if I give you a little bit of, a backdrop on this, right? David had thoughts about rainwater harvesting as a solution, and literally, there was a big, massive drive, and he challenged the team as well to be able to think about a solution that did not require energy consumption. So for anybody who knows a typical rainwater harvesting solution, right? It's pretty much you collecting the water, dumping it, I know how many feet in the ground, and then pumping it to where you need to get it to. But he was helping us in so many ways as his apprentices and his mentees to challenge that thinking, to be able to say, actually, you know what, how about we design something that uses gravity as against pumped energy? And so he simplified the challenge. There was going to be a feature that would, pretty much filter the water, again, using materials that were available, so sand, stone, whatever, right? And that filtration would happen at roof level. And instead of your normal kind of, typical cisterns for toilets, right? What would have is an enlarged tank, which would hold the rainwater after it had been filtered and cleaned through the filters that you see on the left. Now, the picture on the left also shows me working with Anokisha, and if you spotted her in my EDAC picture, you would know that we had kind of carried on, and stuck together in our journeys, progressing into our careers together, because Anoki and I then spent time doing some of the research and the trials that we needed to do to be able to then develop the product very much under David's guidance. And so I learned 3 things. Sustainability is innovation. Innovation is most efficient when the team is right. And total design includes designing for efficient manufacture. And this, very, very simple in its, in its message, but extremely profound. And then it got to the making bit. So I didn't grow up making things as such, right? Yes, I made things out of paper. And so I needed to be able to learn that actually, you know what, I didn't need to be scared of design. I didn't need to be scared of the design into manufacture process. And I got that experience, I got that, visual validation in so many ways that, actually, yes, it's something on paper, but it can leap into life when you choose the right materials and you understand the right methodology, as well as putting in the right sequence, right? I understood through this time of making with David that, design has to happen for manufacture, right? You have to consider how you manufacture your design for your design to be complete, as well as all the interdependencies, all the intersections. So every single component, trying to understand how it fits into another piece, another component, as well as the general principles around design, whether it's something small and simple or something complex. just that idea of taking it apart and then ensuring that you've designed for the component to work in its entirety and ensure that it can be maintained with locally available materials. That then gave me confidence to be able to communicate engineering design. And sometimes I wonder how I got into, telling engineering stories for television. But I think back and I have like zero doubt in my mind that it was pretty much down to the fact that I was a lot more confident in the way engineering had been explained to me. I was more confident of my understanding of the relationship between art, society, and engineering. And so when opportunities came to tell engineering stories for television, I would put my hands up. I would audition. And the first one actually was actually extremely bizarre. I saw an advert for a television program called Titanic: The Mission. And what it was going to do was walk in the shoes of the men and women who built the Titanic. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but the producers needed 4 people to walk in the shoes of these incredible men and women and build parts of the Titanic to its original specification using methods that were used at the time, including all the constraints and all the dangers of the time as well. And again, that was an absolutely incredible experience. And in so many ways, I think it was the awakening for me that there had to be this relationship between engineering and society. Society really had to see that, engineers were there to create the worlds that they lived in, and to help enable people moving from one place to another, to help enable better transport, better sustainability in terms of how buildings work. And I got validation from that as well. I got real validation from that as well, because all of a sudden, there were these articles in various newspapers, and some of them were really cheesy, but then people were starting to recognize that if you could design for sustainability, i.e. continuity, and if you could communicate your design and help people around understand what you were designing for and why you were designing the way you were designing, and really, removing the jargon, right? That was what you needed to be able to achieve success in engineering. And so I started to take out some of the jargon that I had learned in my, communication of engineering, because, I needed to express those ideas to children. I needed to express those ideas to politicians. I needed to inspire people to see beyond the difficult physics difficult, in quote, physics and maths, and to see that if you were literally just, responding to a challenge that involved humans, it did not have to be difficult. And with that same toolbox and a foundation for engineering and communication, I decided to embark on this journey to the Far East to work on what would be bigger projects in a country where I didn't speak the language. I didn't even use chopsticks at the time I was moving to China. And there I saw the same principles work. I saw the same principles of unpacking it, of making it simple to understand, of working out what materials one would use, working out how it would be maintained. I saw those principles work for the super high-rise building projects that I worked on. I saw it work in my relations with my Chinese colleagues, even though there were times there were huge language barriers. I couldn't speak Mandarin when I first moved there. And so when I was, pretty much put in charge of the technical management of this incredible water park that you can see in the top right-hand corner, I was really reliant on those, tools that I had learned, just keeping it extremely simple. And I love the fact that sustainability was a theme that remained consistent, finding ways to be able to make the most of solar power, finding ways to be able to reuse water on this water park project just helped me see the universal application of engineering. And so, I found a playing ground for, really using my skills to tell engineering stories from the area. So different story source, same simplified message of wonder and innovation. I told stories of, the fastest trains in China for, the likes of the Science Channel and Yesterday TV and Discovery Channel. I told stories of the power, big, massive, huge hydropower dams in China as well, for millions of people around the world. And actually, on some of the shots, the pictures, actually, you can see that there were up to 1 million views on some of these videos, and it just in my head really emphasized the proof of the power of that universal language that engineering offers. And so I then progressed to wanting to re-engineer living spaces. And I kind of was inspired by, what could be and what the limits weren't, and really pushing on the boundaries of what, could be done. And I started to tinker with the idea of what I guess I now understand as modular solutions, but then the idea that you could have a space that could be reclaimed. So traditional like bathroom space could be reclaimed during the day when it didn't have to be a bathroom, or you could use modular solutions, 3D printing ideas to create living spaces that were decent for people in slums. So I was heading for that, but then I ended up in construction, working on similar concepts, but probably not as high tech as what I had imagined. I ended up working for a construction company, designing and building modular bathroom pods, as well as several other modular components to buildings. So again, taking that idea of, if you can take away the traffic from site into a controlled space, if you can get, repeatability in terms of the quality of your product, obviously doing all the required tests that I had to do. But again, with the idea that you could then start to incorporate sustainability in construction if you had better control of what the output is. And I definitely learned as well, that there was something called politics in communicating ideas, especially in construction. And I started to even develop further that ability to communicate with very varied people, and with people who would have had, very firm ideas of what they thought things should be. And then also alongside that has been, my work with the Royal Academy of Engineering, to understand how, one can get that ripple effect of ensuring that, you have the right capacity within a country, within a continent, to be able to come up with solutions. And so my work with Global Challenges Research Fund has been incredible. It's been 4 years of working with students, professional bodies, really to increase the capacity of people to have immediate solutions to local challenges. And then more recently has been the, I guess, crystallization of the idea of global citizenship for me, definitely in my head. I've always believed in it, and I've believed in that universal language of design. But then more recently, I've seen the intentional role of that global citizenship in our world. Last year, right, at the heart of, the pandemic and, everything that it was causing, I got messages from students expressing that they were missing out on internship opportunities because of the pandemic. And what started off as just literally wanting to find very quick solutions for what seemed like a very, big, daunting, problem, for these students, turned out to be the most incredible accidental experiment. So I decided to run an internship week. I think I can call it like an internship week, but what it was a work experience week where the students would have access to engineers and wonderful innovators from around the world. And so I reached out to the people who had influenced my design thinking, the people who had helped me understand how to come up with solutions for local problems. And before I knew it, I had this list of over 20 people who were willing to help. And so I opened it up to the world. Got 500 applications from students all over the world. I was able to accommodate 100 students over the week. And the incredible thing was 100 students from over 20 countries, students who had never met each other, had access to this incredible way of thinking that I'd had access to, over 10 plus years. And at the end of the week, they came up with world solutions, incredible world solutions around water supply, around housing and accommodation. And in so many ways, it became a pivotal point for me to really understand and believe in the ripple effect for scalable impact in the language of design. And for me, that has been every validation that I need moving forward. Literally seeing some of the messages that come every so often into my inbox or through LinkedIn, just literally from having sessions with people are able to have the confidence to move on, to be able to say, actually, I have a place here. Actually, I understand that it doesn't have to be complex. Actually, I understand that I can go to MIT and embark on this journey that would have me put in a place where I can bring influence to our world. I'm seeing people go on incredible apprenticeship programs. People are empowered, they're getting the jobs because they have this inspired view of a universal language. I've got a 4-year-old, and she's a huge source of inspiration to me now. And it's so amazing to be able to view things through her. I don't know if she's going to become an engineer. She tells me she's going to become an engineer, but then she also wants to be a trade driver, and she also wants to be a fashion designer. And I'm excited for all of those things. But the fact that she can see the role that she can potentially play in the world, and actually feel that she can, because she's seen, around her constant design. She's seen, and she's seen a simple design. She's seen things that make sense to her. Really gives me a lot of inspiration and a lot of pride, actually, to be honest. And so as I move into my next phase of really kind of like taking it to the next step, to the next, level as such, right? I will definitely be relying on that bag of design tools, those principles, that idea of unpacking it, that idea of sustainability, as well as the idea of ensuring that, we need to continuously have that ripple effect for progress and scalable impact. I'm going to stop there and take questions. I've been going on for a while, definitely longer than I hoped for, but that was my inaugural lecture. Thank you very much for listening.
Now am I here too? Great. Yewande, that was great. You should see who's with us. It's fantastic. I've just had the people with us WhatsApped. We've got like Samantha and Barry and Michele from IET.
Great.
We've got Sophie and Miriam, two of our newish professors, which is great. We've got Caroline, who runs our student services, some students. We've got somebody called Vera Akinola.
Oh, that might be Mom. Hi, Mom.
We've got somebody called Dawn Bonfield here as well.
Yes, I think you know who Dawn Bonfield is. Hi, Dawn.
And we've got campaigners and agitators and inspirational people out there like Nike.
Oh,
so it's
great, fantastic.
You can't see, but I've had it. Anyway, that was really good. Yeah, real treat. Actually, I've never heard that insight before into your life and how you've come to where you've come from. And clearly that blend of artistry and engineering and a bit of politics and things have all come together with that amazing way in which you communicate. So that was fantastic. I'm going to ask a question, which is really, I'd like to ask a question more about looking forward. So that event, by the way, that event you ran last year, that big work experience event that brought together those people, those young people to be inspired, just like you've done with our students at Westminster, was just like a step up for us all. Fantastic. But you've got this really important role, green growth, clean growth, really important for the world, really important for sustainable development, especially if you bring in the sort of context you have around more equality and social justice and those sorts of things. And you've got this fantastic opportunity as the ambassador for Innovate UK for Britain, for the United Kingdom, for clean growth. I mean, tell us how, how are you gonna really make the most of that to optimize the impact that you sort of uniquely will bring to having that position? What's your vision for that, please?
Yeah, the vision is big. It's massive. Because when you look at the state of our world's affairs at the moment, right, there's a lot of politics, right? And for me as an engineer, right, you have to understand that there's the engineering as well as the politics, right? So when we talk clean growth, countries are in alliance because they need to hold on to specific, raw materials on their land, right? There's trade. There are trade wars as well. And the thing for me is, how do you get to a point where you let the innovation speak for itself? How do you get to a point where you make the innovative idea so powerful that it goes ahead and breaks some of these barriers? And the way for me, very clearly, is ensuring that you bring the best minds together. So when I say the best minds, not necessarily the smartest people, right? It's not rocket science most times, but people who reflect the communities that we are serving, right? People who would be able to say, actually, I can bring in my medical perspective, right? I come from Brixton. I understand the solutions that we need to be able to develop for the people that I engage with. And that for me is where the magic would happen. And so I'm working with the Clean Growth team to make sure that we have platforms for these conversations to happen, for the engagement to happen. So definitely one to look out for. Also working with the Clean Growth team to understand how we can speak to the politicians, because we need them on board. You know, we need the engineering to stand out, as well as hold on to the relationships that are needed for progress.
Yeah. So fantastic. You were speaking to our Chancellor with those amazing young women engineers just 2 weeks ago. And yeah, you'll keep on that, I'm sure. And
Yes.
and actually, when you go to our architecture school, and you know, you see the projects that are created by our students who come from, who are sort of liberated to think by our lecturers, who are open, you know, with the underpinning of how architecture works and how things are safe. But when you see this, these incredibly amazing young people who are free and liberated to think, that come from so many parts of the world with so many diverse backgrounds, the things they create and shape together are really, yeah, really remarkable. And they do speak to much more, you know, the lived experiences and the places they've come from, and create places that will work very, very much better for people. I'm just looking at, I've got an iPad with various feeds in. Most of them are like saying, brilliant. And that was really inspiring, and things like that. Let's just have a look.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
So let's here we go. Let's do this one. So here's a fantastic, very thought-provoking. We're going to do one of these for timing, and then I'm going to ask, is it to wrap up? Just to keep more or less to our schedule. But we'll do that. So can you comment on the synergies between the cost of a product and sustainability? It's striking there seems to be a link between affordability, sustainability, and success. How do we wean engineers and those who fund R&D programs away from the technology fetish they seem to? You get the question?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, sometimes, right, you know, you have to look at that. You have to look at that, the approach, right? You know, because when we think about sustainability, we sometimes think it's you know, one solution fixes it all, right? You know, and what we need to do is really understand that sometimes we need to really consider the context, right? So if we're saying batteries, for example, and we all need to be driving, you know, battery powered cars, right? Does that make sense for all communities? Question one, answer one. The cost as well is a big, massive thing, right? You know, I like to work in pilots. So if I'm trying to convince somebody, right, to support something, right, I don't try to make them commit to the entire thing. You know, I kind of try to make them to say, how about we try this, right? How about we do that initial investment into something, see if it works. If I can convince you at the initial stage that it works, then hopefully you'd be wanting to invest into the second part or the third part. That doesn't stop us from having a perspective on scalable impact, right? I know in this country, especially, we need to be having lots of Silicon Valleys in different aspects of industry here. But it's just how you drip feed your stakeholders as well.
I have to ask, we're getting some really good questions, Yewande. I hope everybody forgive us going on just a little long. I'm going to wrap two questions together before we hand over to Izzet. So you're getting some very nice comments.
Thank you.
About how inspiring you are. It's really lovely to read. But I've got two questions here I'm going to wrap together. One is, it's from Janet. Thank you, Janet. It's essential you inspire the next generation. What more can we do to help connect those who might follow in your footsteps? Okay. And then a question from Professor Miriam as well, recent Professor Miriam.
Yes.
Is you know, an extraordinary inspirational talk and incredible work. Anyway, she's interested in the cross-fertilization of different disciplines is so exciting. I wonder if you have a view as to which fields you feel should be brought together that are not at this time. So if you combine that, you know, what's the combination of different fields we need to bring together that might also help inspire a next generation to sort of follow in your footsteps and take your inspiration to find their way to make such positive impacts.
Yeah.
Want to have a go at those two?
Yeah. The first part of that question. Well, thank you very much. I always feel super honored when, you know, anybody thinks that it'd be a worthwhile thing to follow in my footsteps. But the thing as well is, you know, creating, people are attracted to what they connect to, right? So, you know, establishing something, whether it's a conversation, whether it's, oh, I'm here, is there anything I can do to, you know, be part of the conversations that you're having, is a great way to attract the right minds together. And I found, and I really test, you know, I stand by, and my life pretty much is a testament to the fact that, you know, when you get the right minds together and actions follow on from conversation. So whether it's a program, whether it's, you know, that continuous engagement, like those many droplets of water, it then becomes a mighty ocean. And it's an equation that pretty much works all the time. Now, in terms of industries, right, you know, I think energy is a big, massive thing, right? I think food is a big, massive thing as well. You know, every time I think of our world right now, and I think, you know what, I'm going to cut a time capsule through our world. We are going through an extraordinary time right now. And if you can bring people who are interested in energy and food and communication together, I think we have many, many, many stories to tell. Our built environment needs to reflect us as well. So anything that is a big part of what we are seeing in our built environment now, whatever the trends are, I think we should be having conversations with those people.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, I'm going to hand over to Visit now, but I'm just looking to it. All these, we've got Deborah and Dubiesh. We've got so many people from so many different sectors that have joined us. It's a wonderful representation of that sort of intersectionality of all those different worlds you occupy.
Thank you, everybody, for being here.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
And
Thank you.
is it Vera? Vera was your mother's name?
Yes.
I hope you're feeling really proud of your daughter today. Anyway, I'll hand over to Visit now. Thank you so much, Yewande. That was really super.
Peter.
Over to you, Visit.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Yewande. And Vera, you can be truly proud of this amazing daughter of yours. What can I say? What a rich, stimulating, and amazing upbringing and background. I really now understand better, and really better, the amazing person and colleague Yewande is. You have given us a wonderful lecture and shared with us your beautiful journey, Yewande, and thank you for that. This has been a truly inspirational lecture for us all. Really inspirational. Thank you very much, Yewande, and we are very, very fortunate to have you as a visiting professor sponsored by the Royal Academy of Engineering at the University of Westminster. And I know that you have already inspired and touched the lives of many of our students and will continue to do so. And I know they've come and told me that I can actually do it. And I know I can do it because Yewande has really inspired me. I can do it too. And that's amazing, really amazing. Thank you again, Yewande. And our thanks and gratitude to the Royal Academy of Engineering for sponsoring Yewande's visiting professorship. And I will not take any longer and say, I wish you all a great evening, and thanks again, and declare the event closed. Goodbye, and thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Professor Kelly. Thank you.